I considered getting LASIK for years, only to be put off by the dozens of horror stories all over the internet anytime I got close to even considering doing it. But earlier this year, in January, I actually went to a consultation and decided, what the heck? If I go blind, then maybe at least all my senses are going to be so heightened that I become a superhero and can spend the rest of my days saving the week from crime. I mean, there's worse ways to live, right? Now, there are 3 different types of major laser eye surgeries you can opt for. The one you've probably heard of is LASIK. There's also PRK and SMILE. I'll go into the differences between all of them later in this video. All you need to know for now is that I did opt for SMILE, although I do believe that my experience and everything I'm about to share with you is applicable no matter which procedure you end up choosing. Now, just for a little bit of background about me, I started having vision issues sometime around middle school, maybe like 10 or 11. I would have to wear glasses in the classroom, but I didn't need to wear them all the time. And it wasn't until I think maybe 8th grade that I went in to get contacts to wear permanently. And ever since then, I had been wearing contacts and using glasses at night. So my prescription before I went into the surgery was -5 in both eyes with a slight astigmatism in both. Now, what is the difference between LASIK, PRK, and SMILE, and why did I choose SMILE? So LASIK uses a laser to cut a little flap in your eye, and then they lift the flap, reshape the surface of your cornea, close the flap, and you're good to go. Now you can see 20/20. Now, the pros of this are that it's very quick. The recovery time is really short. Now, the 2 major cons are that number 1, you're more likely to experience dry eye than the other 2 procedures because you are cutting a lot of nerves that have to heal over time. And number 2, now this is a little bit more of a rare concern, but that flap never fully heals back into a flat cornea. You're always gonna have a flap there. And if you were to end up in some sort of freak accident where you get hit in the eye, you get jabs in the eye, then that could potentially dislodge that flap and cause problems. Now, PRK is the oldest procedure of the 3. Instead of creating any sort of like incision in the surface of your cornea, what they actually do is shave down the surface and reshape it and then allow that cornea to regrow over time. Now, the pros to this, number 1, most obviously you don't have a flap created, so if you have any sort of concerns about that flap being dislodged, that's not a problem with PRK. That also means that there is less chance of dry eye. The biggest con to PRK is that the recovery time is a little bit longer and more painful than the other 2 surgeries. Because you're actually waiting for your cornea to regrow itself, you're going to be more sensitive to light for longer. You're going to experience a lot of that pain, stinging, burning for maybe a few days, maybe longer. And in general, your eyes are just going to take longer to heal. Now, SMILE is the newest procedure of all of them. It is only 10 years old, and I believe it was introduced to the US back in 2018. That's when it first became legal. So it is a very young procedure, and that's something that I was concerned about at the beginning. But luckily, my surgeon did have a good amount of experience with this procedure, and they had worked on a lot of patients before me. Now, SMILE is pretty similar to LASIK in that you are creating an incision, except instead of that being like a really big flap, you're just creating a small hole. And what's happening during the surgery is this laser is creating what's called a lenticle. I think that's how it's pronounced. And it basically looks like a big cataract that they're forming in there. And once that's created, the surgeon actually goes in and pulls out the lenticle manually. So this surgery takes a lot more manual skill from your doctor, and it also takes a little bit longer because it's not just the laser that's doing the entire procedure. Now, the pros of SMILE is that you are much less likely to experience dry eye because you're not creating a really big incision around the entire cornea, and the healing time is similar, if not quicker, I believe, than LASIK. So it has the smallest recovery time out of the 3. There aren't really any downsides to getting this surgery in terms of like complications that you're going to experience later, at least not compared to PRK and LASIK. The only real downside, I would say, is that the pool of candidates who qualify for SMILE is a lot smaller than the other 2, so that's a big reason why people don't get it, and you know, everyone's not really familiar with it because it is so new as well. So it can be a little bit harder to find a doctor who is qualified. So when I originally went in for my consultation, I was asking for PRK because I do a combat sport, and that's one of the things that disqualifies you from LASIK. You can do LASIK, of course, but given that I spent a lot of time voluntarily being punched in the face, I did not want the chance of a flapping my eye opening during a fight or a sparring session, and PRK just sounded better for me in the long run. But when I did go see my doctor, he introduced me to Smile. I hadn't heard about it before then. You know, he talked me through all of the different pros and cons of everything, and I decided at the end of the day that Smile probably would be a better option for me, and that's why I went with it. I know you're just dying to know why I am wearing glasses right now. And that is because in about 2 hours, I'm gonna go to get my corneas lasered off. Technically not lasered off. They're gonna get a little incision and make a little thing and pull it out, and then I'm gonna have 20/20 vision. I had all of my appointments a few weeks ago, so today is actually the day that I'm doing the whole procedure. I am extremely nervous, and I have made myself very anxious by reading a lot of negative anecdotes on the internet about how laser surgery can go wrong, which I don't suggest doing that if you ever want to get your eyes corrected, especially if you are anxiety prone like me. It was actually one of the reasons why I waited so long to do it, partially because my eyes were still adjusting, but also last year when I did plan on going to get my eyes fixed, I started reading all of these stories, got really freaked out, and just procrastinated on it because of that. But I'm trying to remind myself that anecdotes are not statistics, and plenty of people come out for the better for it, so it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So I'm gonna check in with y'all in a few hours and we'll see how I'm feeling. So what exactly happens on surgery day? My surgery was scheduled for February 2nd, which was 2 or 3 days ago now. It's February 4th currently. My appointment was at 4:15, so I was the last patient to come in for the day. I arrived about 20 minutes early because I was really nervous, and I checked in. They gave me a little goodie bag with some artificial tears in them, like an instruction pamphlet telling me what the surgery was going to be like, an emergency number in case anything happened during my recovery, and they also put in the 2 medicated eye drops I had picked up prior, which were steroids for inflammation and antibiotics, I believe. I'd started taking the antibiotics 24 hours before, and the steroids were gonna start immediately after surgery. They offered me Advil and Ativan in case you were nervous, and in my case, I was extremely nervous, so they gave me 2 milligrams, which I don't know if it helped me that much during surgery. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ativan, but it is a very slow-acting anti-anxiety medication, so at the beginning, I maybe felt like a little bit relaxed physically right before my surgery and during my surgery, but I definitely was not loopy at all, and that was by intention because the surgery is actually very active, and as a patient, you really do have to participate and work with your doctor, which I'll go into a little bit later. But because of that, they don't want you taking anything that is going to make it difficult for you to follow instructions. So after I got my little goodie bag and took my medication, I sat down, waited to be called. They brought me into the prep room, gave me some eye drops, talked me through the procedure again so I knew what was going to be happening. And then I think I sat for about like maybe 10 or 15 minutes for whatever drops they gave me to take effect. Then they came in to get me. They brought me to a separate room where they had the big laser bed. They helped guide me there because obviously I couldn't see. I didn't have anything in my eyes. And, you know, I laid down, had my head in like this little donut hole thing. They gave me like a knee prop rest. So before they get started, they put in some numbing drops in your eyes, which work instantly. And then they tape down one eye and they put a clamp in the other eye. So you don't really have to worry about blinking. They're putting in drops in your eyes, so it's not gonna get dry or anything. It's not uncomfortable. Everything is numb, of course. And once all of that is prepared, they do like this little brush over your eye, which you can't feel at all, and they push you underneath the laser. So once you're underneath the laser, you're gonna see like this white ring of light, and then there's like this little green laser in the center of it. And the doctor tells you to focus on it for about 10 seconds. Your vision starts to get kind of hazy because there's like this little cataract lenticle thing forming over it. And then once that's done, there's this part where they really emphasize that you kind of have to like zone out and not focus on anything because your eye muscles have to relax. And if they don't relax, then that can cause like complications. So I was really nervous about that part because I think focusing on a point is one thing, but being told to specifically not focus on something is like a little bit difficult. But luckily, because your vision is so cloudy at this point, I think it is easy to sort of like zone out a little bit. I really just focused on singing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star over and over again and trying not to think about the fact that there was a laser in my eye. And then after a few seconds of that, they pull you back out, and this is where the doctor starts to actually manually go in to the incision and pull out the lenticle that was created. And that part took forever. Okay, you think that the laser is the worst part, but honestly, having this guy like go in and like scrape around in your eyeball, even though you can't feel anything, it's kind of stressful. And I think the worst part about this is you have to be so active because there's like this little white light that's above you and you're supposed to be focusing on it the whole time. But the white light starts to kind of like move and get blurry because they're manually moving your eyeball around, right? And the point of you focusing on the light above you is that you want to counteract the doctor's movement and make sure that your eyeball is still straight ahead. I don't know if that makes sense, but you're just gonna kind of see this like white light moving around all the time, and you know that if you don't focus on it, something could go wrong. And to me, that was just really stressful, and my anxiety meds were not strong enough to counteract that stress. Overall, it was fine. I got through it. Once that was done, they did like a lot of brushing. They used some saline drops to flush out any particles that might have gotten underneath. And then they tape your eyes shut, open the other one, repeat the same procedure on the other side. And when I had my left eye, which was the second one they did, done, I got really nervous during like the green laser part of it because I started to move my eye a little bit and the green laser started to jump around. I had to try even harder to follow it, which made it jump around even more. And then the doctor sounded kind of nervous. They're like, oh my God, you're moving a lot, you need to stop moving. But luckily it was fine. I focused on it. It was good. Nothing bad happened. Overall, the procedure to me felt a lot longer than they said it was going to be. Albie was in the waiting room waiting for me at the end, and he said it was really quick. He thought it was maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, but I checked the video I took right before I left the prep room, and it was at, I think like 4:41, and then I checked my phone again coming back into the prep room after the procedure, and it said 5:19. So that was like almost 40 minutes, 20 minutes per eye. I don't know if I'm like misremembering it, but I do think it was a little bit longer than it should have been, maybe because there was just difficulty getting certain things done. Anyway, going back to after the procedure, they got me up from the laser bed, and I initially could tell right away that my vision was clearer. There was like a huge haze or grayness over top of it, and also just some like black spots from the bright lights. But in general, I would say my vision was probably 80% of the way better at this point. The doctor got me up from the bed and walked me over to the slit lamp just to make sure that like everything was okay. He said it all went perfectly. Then I went back to the prep room. They gave me sunglasses. I went out. Albie brought me home, and that was it. This is very weird for me because, like, you know how without correction everything is closer, and your glasses and stuff make things a little farther, so it's like the distance is weird. I'm like dizzy.
Ma'am, I'm your Uber driver. Your boyfriend sent me.
Burt Macklin, FBI.
Is that the medication talking?
Yes.
There's another lady, the one right before you. Yeah, she came out like skipping and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's definitely fucking the medication.
No, I don't think it's medication. I think it's
relief.
The relief of going, like your body being in stress and then it's over. I think the Ativan helped a little bit, but it wasn't a lot. Like I could still feel my heart thudding in the waiting room all the way up through surgery. Okay, just finished surgery. It's over, thank goodness. So right now I can see like mostly clearly, but I just have a really thick haze over my eyes.
So, are you ready for this?
What?
You've actually been in a coma for 5 years. It's 2027, you just woke up, and we want to ease you into this new world. We did get you some robot eyes. This car does fly, so put on your 5 seat belts.
It's funny you say that because the entire surgery felt like I was being operated on by aliens. Like I felt like I was on a spaceship, and I like woke up and was like in a haze, and there's aliens like, Saber, open your eyes, da da da. Well, and they're like, don't move, follow the lights.
Well, we're gonna have to go back because President Elon is gonna do his State of the Union, so.
My eyes are starting to hurt now though.
Yeah,
starting to sting a little bit.
Yeah, it's gonna be throbbing.
Which is not great, so I'm gonna go home, maybe
we're going to Muay Thai.
Hang out. Yeah, I'm gonna go to Muay Thai.
What are you talking about?
Take my protective goggles.
No, we have those big goggles for you to wear. You're gonna wear a helmet too. The hockey goalie helmet.
Maybe in a few days. On the way home, I did start to feel a little bit of the pain in my eyes as the numbing drops are wearing off. If you've ever had like an eye infection, I personally have had 2 corneal abrasions, so I'm very familiar with the sensation, but it's similar to that, where there's just a lot of like stinging and kind of like light sensitivity, and it becomes like a little bit difficult to open your eyes. It wasn't that bad, honestly. Like, I mean, I just kept my eyes closed for the most part, and it was very manageable. I would say probably about like an hour after I got home, it started to subside and I felt totally normal. Okay, so a little update. It is 8:15. My surgery ended around 5:15, so it's 3 hours right now. And my eye stopped hurting. It only started hurting for maybe like 30 minutes to an hour once I got in the car and came back, so that's good. And the film over my eyes is clearing up. Things are getting a little bit clearer. There's actually lights on in here and it's not like insanely bright. About an hour ago I was trying to like watch the TV when it was dark and I just like couldn't open my eyes. So progress so far. And we have our celebratory Korean fried chicken, tteokbokki, and some beef soup. They did tell me that I was not supposed to sleep for a few hours because I needed to make sure that my eyes stayed lubricated and didn't get too dry. So I laid down, listened to an audiobook. Eventually I was able to go to sleep, and when I woke up in the morning, I had 20/20 vision, which was insane. I thought it would take longer for me to heal and my vision might be like a little bit blurry at first, but everything was great. It did feel a little bit dry, kind of like, you know, when you wake up after having slept in contacts and things are like a little bit cloudy or blurry at times because your eyes are so dry. It's a little bit like that, but I can tell, like, you know, for the most part, I can still see. Like, my vision is 95% there. I did have my post-op appointment at 9:45, so that was less than 24 hours from the surgery. And when I went in, they said everything was great. Confirmed my vision was 20/20, so that was amazing to hear. Later in the day, I was out in the evening, and I did notice starbursts and halos around traffic lights, but it wasn't so bad that I wouldn't trust myself driving. And that is something to be expected in general. No matter which surgery you get, it's very normal for your night vision to kind of like be a little wonky for a little while. And now on February 4th, 2 days later, my vision is still great. I don't have any issues, no pain. I still have a little bit of dry eye, but it's not uncomfortable by any means. It's just sometimes things get like a little bit hazy because of the dryness, but that's what I got these artificial tears for. And that is expected to continue to clear up within the next week, and they said my vision should keep getting better and better over the next few months. Although it's pretty good now, so I'm definitely okay with being patient for it to get perfect. Now I'm sure the question on your mind is, would I do it again knowing what I know now? And the answer to that is yes. It was totally worth the time, the money, the preparation, the recovery, the slightly traumatizing experience of being operated on by my alien overlords. And yes, I would do it again. Overall, I would say it's kind of like having an Apple Watch where your life is totally fine before it, but once you actually get one, you can't imagine ever going back. And the biggest benefit is that if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, I will be able to see long enough to survive for a few months until I inevitably do something stupid enough to get eaten. And just to address the elephant in the room, which is what I talked about at the very beginning of this video, there are a lot of people who get this surgery and do have complications, okay? It's not a guarantee that you're gonna be a successful outcome. So it really is up to you to do the research, to understand what you're getting yourself into. I will say you should be careful about treating anecdotes as statistics. You know, of course, if something goes wrong, it's much more likely that you're gonna wanna complain about it. So when you see these stories online about how these surgeries did not go as planned, just keep that in mind. I'm not trying to discount anyone else's experience. Those experiences are totally valid, and again, it's possible things are not gonna go the way you want it to. Same can be said about anything in life. I mean, you could get in a car accident on the way to the grocery store. It doesn't mean you're never gonna drive to the grocery store again. If you are considering it, my only advice is to make sure you go to the best doctor available to you, and to not, I repeat, do not cut corners when it comes to costs. I know there's Groupons out there. I know you could fly to another country and get it done cheaper, but just remember these are your eyes you're talking about. If you can't afford to go to someone who is experienced and the best in their field, then I highly, highly suggest you stick to your contacts or glasses until you've saved up a little bit more. I hope some of that was helpful. I know it can be really nerve-wracking going into an elective procedure that literally involves lasers in your eyeballs. So I just wanted to share my experience in case it gives you a little bit more information on what it's like. And of course, as always, you should take the things you see on the internet with a grain of salt and do your own research. I'm not a licensed medical professional. I am not an eye surgeon. I am just a girl talking to you from her camera, trying to share her own experience getting her eyes fixed. If you have any more questions about the surgery or what I went through in particular, feel free to drop a comment below. And other than that, hope you have a great day. Bye!